This was not my initial plan at all. I was just spending time around Gyeongbokgung Palace, walking through the area, taking everything in, and then heading back toward the subway from Gwanghwamun Square. And I came across it. It wasn't something I had researched or planned for. I wasn't looking for a specific exhibition. I wasn't on a schedule. I was literally just on my way out. And then I noticed the statue of King Sejong, which you kind of can't ignore. It's right there, central, and there's always people around it. But what caught my attention wasn't just the statue. It was realizing that there's an entire space underneath it. And I paused for a second because it's one of those moments where you decide, do I keep going or do I check this out? And it would have been really easy to just keep walking, to tell myself I'd come back another time. But instead, I went down, and that one small decision completely changed how I understood who King Sejong was. Underneath the King Sejong statue, there's a whole exhibition space called the Story of King Sejong. And it's one of those places that doesn't just tell you who he was. It shows you how much of modern Korea still connects back to him. And I didn't realize how much there was to him beyond he just created Hangul, because he really did a lot more than that. So, King Sejong. Even if you don't know Korean history, you've probably heard the name, but being in this space makes him feel less like a name you recognize and more of a person you start to understand. He wasn't just a king in the traditional sense, he was deeply curious, like the kind of person who doesn't just accept how things are, and that's something the exhibition really leans into. So yes, Hangul is a huge part of the exhibition. But instead of just saying he created it, they break down how it was designed. There are displays showing the structure of the letters, how the shapes are connected to the way sounds are physically formed in your mouth, which is something I didn't really fully think about before. It's not random, it's deliberate. And you see explanations of how, before Hangul, most written communication relied on complex Chinese characters that weren't accessible to everyday people. So creating Hangul wasn't just a linguistic achievement, it was a social one. It meant that more people could learn to read and write. And the exhibition actually shows how that shift changed communication in society over time. And standing here, looking at how it was developed, how intentional it was, you realize this wasn't just about language, it was about giving people a voice. It's about giving people the tools to express themselves. But what I found the most interesting is everything else he did, because this is the part people don't always talk about. There's a whole section dedicated to science and technology during his reign. King Sejong actively supported the development of tools that help people understand the world around them better. For example, there are models and explanations of early astronomical instruments, things used to track the stars, measure time, and understand seasons more accurately. And that might sound niche, but it was essential for agriculture, which most people depended on. There are also displays about rain gauges, some of the earliest standardized ones, which sound simple, but measuring rainfall consistently meant better farming decisions, better planning, and ultimately more stability for the population. And seeing those instruments recreated or explained in the space makes you realize how practical his thinking was. He wasn't just focused on ideas, he cared about how those ideas affected everyday life. Another part that stood out to me was how much he invested in medicine. He supported research into herbal medicine and worked toward making healthcare knowledge more accessible, not just limited to a small group of elites. And again, there's this pattern. Everything comes back to accessibility. Education, health, communication, it's all connected. King Sejong also supported the Hall of Worthies, which was basically a group of scholars who worked on research, policy, and innovation. It wasn't just one person making decisions, it was a system he built that allowed ideas to develop. As you move through the exhibition, you're not just reading text the whole time. They are scaled models, diagrams, interactive elements, and visual reconstructions that help you picture things, like how instruments were used, how systems were organized, how ideas turned into actual tools or policies. And I think that's what makes it engaging. It's not abstract. You can actually see what these achievements look like in practice. If you're ever visiting Seoul, this is one of those places that gives you context for everything else you see. You'll recognize his name in so many places, but this is where you'll actually understand why. And it doesn't take a full day. You can go at your own pace, spend time on what interests you, and still walk away with a lot. It's easy to access, it's right in the center of the city, and it adds depth to your entire experience in Korea. I think the biggest takeaway for me is this. King Sejong didn't just leave behind one major achievement. He created systems, language, tools, knowledge that continue to grow long after he was gone. And standing in this space, seeing it all come together, you start to understand how rare that actually is. It's not just history. It's something that's still shaping everyday life, and that's what makes it worth seeing.